Hey guys, tonight we're going to a place where the sun does most of the work, your feet stay permanently dusted in red clay, and salt isn't something you pour, it's something you grow. Welcome to the salt flats of 19th century Hawaii, where the days are hot, the ponds are silent, and the flavor of the islands is slowly crystallized in the sun. This is the world of pa'akai, sea salt harvested not with machines but with patience, family, wooden scrapers, and the kind of weather watching you won't learn in school. It's also a world where you'll rise before dawn, spend hours crouched beside glassy ponds, and maybe, just maybe, catch a glimpse of your reflection in water slowly turning white. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. The humidity alone would melt your will to live by breakfast, and we haven't even gotten to the part where you have to squat barefoot in clay all day. But you won't need to worry about that, because we're here to fall asleep to it instead. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up early, not because you want to, but because the tide says it's time. The wind is soft through the kiawe trees. You stretch on a mat woven from lohala, already warm with the breath of the earth beneath it. The smell of salt lingers in your hair, your skin, your dreams. Outside, the salt ponds shimmer in the half-light, still thin and ghost-pale, like mirrors that haven't made up their minds. It's harvest season, and the air tastes like brine and sun. You walk barefoot to the edge of the flats. Your toes sink into the red clay, warm already. This is Alea, the iron-rich earth that gives Hawaiian salt its famous pink hue. It sticks to everything, your soles, your wooden rake, the folds of your kapa cloth. Salt is growing in the ponds, not sprinkled in but drawn out by the sun. Seawater is channeled into shallow beds carved carefully into the coastal land. The water sits, it shimmers, it shrinks. And one day, like this day, salt begins to bloom. You crouch beside the pond and rake lightly. Salt flakes off the bottom, soft and feathery like first frost. It gathers into little white islands, drifting piles that sparkle as the sun climbs higher. This is your job. This is your morning. Historians still argue whether these salt ponds, pa'akai gardens, were based on ancient Polynesian prototypes, or if they emerged later, uniquely adapted to Hawaii's dry southern coasts. Either way, they're simple, elegant, and deeply tied to the land. You work with tools passed down, a gourd scoop for transferring brine, a wooden scraper carved from kiawe, a straining cloth made from tightly pounded bark. You rinse your hands in a side pond where the water's still deep. Even that tastes of salt. Nearby, your cousin is brushing fine crystals into a woven basket lined with tea leaves. She hums a song you don't know the words to, but you recognize the tune. It's slow, steady, perfect for salt work. You glance up. The ocean is just visible beyond the dunes, silver and loud. But here, in the pond, all is quiet. You can hear insects in the brush, the occasional flap of a mina bird, and the soft shuffle of someone behind you preparing breakfast, probably breadfruit, maybe leftover fish. Your stomach growls. You rake faster. Salt isn't just seasoning here, it's ceremony. It blesses new homes, new canoes, newborns. It's rubbed into cuts, folded into offerings, and packed alongside dried fish for long journeys. When you hold a scoop of pa'akai in your hand, you're holding more than taste. You're holding time. You carry a shallow pan of crystals to the drying mat, a platform of woven reed elevated just above the ground. You spread the salt gently, let it bake just a little longer. A few grains cling to your fingers. You taste one, sharp, clean, a little sweet even. Salt doesn't grow fast. It's not rushed. It takes days of sun, hours of watchfulness, and a willingness to accept that sometimes the wind changes everything. You look back at the pond. The surface is clearer now, glassy and still. The harvest is halfway done, and already the shadows have shortened. A good start, a quiet day, a world turning slowly towards salt. You don't eat until the brine is raked. That's the rule, passed down from elders who claim that salt doesn't like to be ignored. So before any thoughts of warm taro or roasted banana cross your sleepy mind, you're already back at the pond with a rake in hand and sunlight creeping across the flats like honey on stone. The rake is smooth with years of use, carved from sturdy kiawe, the handle polished by palms of different generations. You drag it slowly across the pond's surface, collecting the salt crystals that bloomed overnight. Some sparkle like tiny stars. Others clump like wet snow, reluctant to leave their watery beds. Each pond has its own rhythm. This one, your family's oldest, fills from a tide-fed canal that was dug decades ago by a great-granduncle with a limp and a fondness for chewing on sugar cane. He claimed the pond listened to the moon more than the ocean. You still don't know what that means, but today the brine looks calm, obedient. You crouch low, rake gently. Don't stir the red clay at the bottom. That would cloud the salt and ruin the harvest. Just skim the surface. Float the flakes toward the edges. Let them settle like sleeping birds. A breeze picks up, warm and predictable, nudging the reeds and fluttering your shirt. You adjust your hat, a wide woven dome tied loosely under your chin, and keep working. The sun hasn't reached its full glare yet, but you know it's coming. Better to finish before it decides to get personal. Historians still argue whether traditional Hawaiian salt production was ever industrial in scope. Some claim it was mostly for home and ritual use. Others insist it quietly fueled a trade network larger than most assume. You've seen the old ledgers tucked in gourd jars, lists of trades, records of ship visits, notations in fading ink about baskets of salt swapped for muslin or mirrors. You gather a panful and carry it over to the drying mats. The mats are propped above the pond on sticks and stone, shaded just slightly by a frond screen. Too much sun too fast, and the salt hardens wrong. Too little, and it stays sticky, reluctant to let go of its moisture. You spread the salt thin, careful not to clump it. Your aunt used to call this salt ironing. She'd say, "Make it smooth like your uncle's singing voice, flat but still useful." You didn't get the joke until he tried singing at a wedding. As you lay out the crystals, you spot a few odd ones. A chunk shaped like a crescent moon, another that looks like a tiny fish hook. You tuck those aside. The kids like to collect them, pretend they're lucky. The morning is already fading toward late. The light has turned from gold to white. You shade your eyes and check the next pond, slightly deeper, slower to crystallize. It needs stirring. You grab a long-handled gourd dipper, wade carefully in, and mix the brine in lazy figure eights. It's meditative, hypnotic, like paddling in a still canoe. You hear birds overhead, feel the sun on the back of your neck, and remember you were supposed to check the canal gate at dawn. You forgot. The pond forgives you. Eventually your brother calls out from the shade. "Breakfast?" You nod, rake set aside, salt spread like soft pink snow behind you. You sit on a driftwood bench and eat warm taro with your hands. The edges are sticky and the middle steams. Someone hands you a slice of salted fish wrapped in tie leaf. The salt crunches between your teeth, your salt. You recognize the taste. It's sharper than ocean water, rounder than table salt. It tastes like work, like patience, like the sun itself stopped by for lunch. As you eat, a neighbor walks by carrying a clay jar filled with wet salt. You nod in greeting. She nods back. No words needed. The salt is talking today. Children play at the far end of the pond, barefoot, muddy, laughing as they slide around on clay. You'd tell them to stop, but honestly, you did the same thing. Probably still would, if your knees didn't creak like bamboo in a strong wind. You finish your meal, wash your hands with a gourd scoop, and return to your tools. There's still another pond to check. The brine levels need watching. The salt flakes need collecting. The sun still has hours of mischief left. And you? You rake. Quietly, carefully, as you always have. The tools are simple, but they speak volumes. You carry them in a woven satchel that smells faintly of salt and thyme. A wooden rake carved from a single piece of drifted kiawe. A gourd scoop so old its surface is cross-hatched with tiny, hairline cracks like the dried salt flats themselves. a cloth strainer made from fine kappa bark, soft enough to filter, strong enough to last a decade. You lay each one out beside your drying mat. They sit there like companions in a slow dance. None of them are sharp, none of them are fast, but together they've shaped thousands of pounds of salt, pink, white, and sometimes a ghostly shade of blue that no one agrees on. This morning you're working the middle pond, the one with the clearest brine and the smoothest bottom. You step in, knee-deep, the warm water folding around your calves like silk and soup all at once. The clay beneath your feet shifts slightly as you move, never quite solid, never quite liquid. You begin with the rake, drawing it gently through the water. Salt crystals bump against each other like tiny boats on a windless sea. You guide them toward the shallows where they'll dry faster. There's a rhythm to it. Drag, lift, shake, drag, lift, shake. A few feet away, your uncle is bent over a shallower pond, using a strainer to separate fine salt from the heavier chunks. His hat is too small, his shoulders too wide. The sun has made a permanent map of creases on the back of his neck. He hums a song that isn't Hawaiian, isn't anything really, just a loop of vowels and gravel that fits the pace of his scraping. You pause to check the slope of the pond's edge. It's holding. The brine hasn't escaped. The little lava rock levee you patched last week is still firm. You pat it gently with your foot in thanks. Historians still debate whether these salt tools varied widely between families or whether there was a standard salt kit across the islands. Some records hint at regional designs, curved rakes on Maui, flatter ones on Oahu. Others say it depended entirely on the hand that made it and the pond it was meant for. You take up the scoop and move to the corner pond, the newest, the fussiest. It's where the brine is still thin, still in the early stage of transformation. The scoop dips in, then out, pouring water into a side channel lined with fine lava sand. This is where impurities are filtered out. Not everything from the ocean deserves to be salt. Each tool has its feel. The rake is steady, stubborn. The scoop is cooperative, patient. The strainer? A diva. It clogs easily. It sags in humidity. But when it works, the salt comes out light as snowflakes, ready for drying mats or clay jars. A neighbor passes by carrying a bundle of dried pandanus leaves. She stops to look at your scoop. "That belonged to your grandfather," she says. "He said it made the salt taste like sunlight." You smile. The scoop has never said that to you, but it does creak when it's pleased. You return to the drying mat and begin laying out today's harvest. The sun has climbed past the palms now, and the breeze smells like warmed seaweed and distant mangoes. As you spread the salt across the reed surface, you notice something strange. A single crystal, large and perfect, shaped like a tiny cube. You hold it up to the light. It catches it like glass. You think about keeping it, but instead you nestle it gently into the corner of the drying mat. You know someone will find it later and think it's magic. That's part of the job too. The rest of the day moves slowly. You scrape, you scoop, you strain. You stop once to retie a drying tarp, once to swat a mosquito, once to drink from a half-hollowed coconut with water so cold it makes your teeth hum. You end with a cleaning. Rinse your tools in a brine basin, let them dry in the shade, wrap them in cloth, place them back into the satchel. They deserve rest too. As you walk home, red clay clinging to your ankles, your hands still smell faintly of salt and wood. You think about how the tools outlive the hands that hold them, and how somehow that makes the salt taste better. The wind shifts, and everyone notices. It's subtle at first, the way the fronds of the coconut trees tilt in a slightly new direction, or how the salt mats flutter at their corners like they're whispering something urgent. But out here on the salt flats, you learn to read those little things like their headlines. Today, the breeze is slower, heavier, coming from the southeast. That means more humidity. That means slower evaporation. That means the brine ponds may sulk and stall, refusing to give up their crystals. You shade your eyes and squint across the flats. Sure enough, the midline ponds, usually glimmering with that telltale crystal bloom, are just rippling softly. No shine, no crust. It's not ruined, not yet. but it means you're in for a day of waiting and watching. You find your rake and poke at the edge of the shallowest pond. Nothing but warm water and clay. A waste of effort, really. You prop the rake against a boulder and sigh. This is the part of salt harvesting they don't romanticize. You walk the perimeter of your pond garden, checking levees and windbreaks. You adjust a palm frond curtain to keep dust from drifting into the evaporation bed. You notice someone's left their sandals on the wrong side of the canal again. You move them, even though you said you wouldn't anymore. Historians still argue whether Hawaiian salt farmers followed formal calendars or simply listened to the wind and tide. Some say lunar charts guided the timing of brine transfers. Others believe the old-timers just had better knees, and those knees told them when to harvest. You crouch beside your pond and feel the clay. Still warm. Not wet. The drying might yet begin. But not if the clouds keep creeping in. A chant starts behind you, soft, rhythmic, repeated 3 times. Your aunt. She's sitting cross-legged by the main pond, holding a calabash bowl filled with cool brine and a white flower. She dips her fingers into the water, flicks it gently toward the pond, and sings again. It's not magic. Not exactly. But it's tradition. A request for patience, maybe. Or clarity. Or just a way to pass time without muttering. You sit with her, not joining the chant, but swaying slightly to its rhythm. The sun is trying to break through the gauzy clouds now, shining like a torch wrapped in tapa cloth. You feel the warmth return to the ponds. You rise and check again. Still water, no sparkle. So instead you work the outer trench. It's the pathway between ponds, a narrow clay-lined channel where seawater is sometimes diverted. Over time it accumulates odd things. Twigs, little shells, the occasional fish who's wandered too far from relevance. You scoop the trench clean, scrape the base with a flat paddle, and rinse your hands. The work doesn't harvest salt, but it prepares for it. And that's often just as important. Around midday, you take a break beneath a lean-to. It's made of driftwood and banana leaves, and it creaks with the wind like it's thinking aloud. You drink water from a gourd, chew a bit of dried mango, and watch the brine shimmer without solidifying. You think of the phrase your grandmother used whenever the ponds refused to give. Even the salt sleeps. You used to think she meant the water. Now you're pretty sure she meant you. Still, you don't leave. Salt doesn't like to be abandoned mid-bloom, so you stay, you watch. Eventually the clouds lift, just a little. A thin line of sunlight finds its way to your shallows. You rise and walk barefoot to the edge of the middle pond. The air feels lighter now, still humid but cooperative. You kneel, and there it is, the faintest shimmer on the pond floor, like sugar spilled on stone. Salt. It's beginning. Not a full harvest, not yet. But a hint, a tease, a promise. You return to your rake, shake off a spider web, and drag it through the pond in slow, expectant arcs. There's a rhythm again. You can feel it. Salt grows by sunlight, yes. But it also grows by waiting. You never quite notice when the red clay stains your feet. It just happens. Somewhere between raking the brine and hauling your tools to the drying mats, your soles change color. They pick up the deep, earthy hue of alaia, the iron-rich clay beneath the ponds that gives Hawaiian salt its signature pink tone. The stain doesn't come off easily, and you don't want it to. The elders say alaia isn't just soil, it's blood of the land. Mixed with seawater and sunlight, it becomes something greater, something sacred. You squish through the shallows barefoot now, inspecting the bottom of a pond that's just begun to crust. The salt here is tinged faintly pink from the alaia. It clings in lace-like webs between your toes, catching the light like sugar on glass. This batch is destined for ceremony. You scoop a palmful of the salt in progress, letting the water drain slowly between your fingers. It's not ready yet. Still too soft, still clumping like a half-baked cake. But by tomorrow, it will be firm. It will be dry. And it will be fit for chiefs and gods alike. You mark the pond edge with a coconut stick, just a small notch in the dirt to remind yourself, this one is special. No foot traffic, no splashing, no games. Historians still argue whether the use of Alea clay was purely aesthetic or deeply spiritual. Some say it was added only for color and trace minerals. Others believe it had cleansing properties, used in blessings, healings, and burial rites. You've seen it sprinkled over fishing nets, rubbed on newborns' foreheads, and offered beside stone altars in silence. You head to the storage shed. Inside are rows of gourds and jars, some new, some so old their labels have worn away. You find one half full with last season's pa'akai alea. You open the lid and breathe in the scent, sharp, clean, and a little like dried iron. Your uncle once said, "That's the smell of food, family, and things we don't say out loud." He might have been right. Later in the afternoon, you help prepare a batch for the ali'i, the chiefs. It's part of an offering to be delivered by canoe in 2 days' time. The salt must be pure, dry but not brittle, granular but not sharp. You ladle it out carefully, spreading it on a reed mat inside the shade hut. A cousin hums as she stirs it gently with a broad wooden spoon, careful not to break the flakes. You help fold a cloth pouch lined with tie leaves. It will be used to wrap the finished salt. The pouch smells faintly of smoke, dried over the hearth last night to keep the bugs out. It's all deliberate. Everything is. A small ceremony happens at sunset. Not grand, not loud. Just 4 of you gathered beside the sacred pond. A bowl of Alea clay is set at the edge. You smear a line across your forearm, just enough to mark the intent. The clay is cool, grounding, as if it remembers more than you do. The salt in the sacred pond is nearly ready. You watch it harden as the day cools, a soft crust forming like frozen foam across the water. Each crystal feels earned. And tomorrow, the harvest begins. As you walk back home, your feet crunch softly on dry clay, leaving a trail of reddish prints behind you, part water, part land, part memory. And maybe that's what makes this salt sacred. Not just where it's from, but what you give to it along the way. The salt for the ali'i is ready. You rise before the sky turns fully pink, long before the heat begins to press down like a thick kapa cloth. The sacred pond is quiet, coated in a delicate crust that fractures slightly when you step near it. Soft crackles beneath your soles, like the pond is sighing after a good night's rest. You squat at the edge and run your fingers through the top layer. The salt is perfect, dry, firm, shaped like tiny stars in broken mirrors. The surface gives way to granular clusters, slightly pink from the Alea clay beneath, but not muddy. You know immediately this batch will be remembered. The others arrive shortly after. Your aunt, your cousin, and the elder from the village who knows all the old chants but forgets where she leaves her sandals. Everyone's wearing clean clothes today, heads wrapped in simple cloth, arms freshly scrubbed. You even rinsed your rake. It squeaks a little from the friction, clean wood talking back. You begin the harvest in silence. Each scoop is shallow, careful, deliberate. No rushing. You move in spirals, working outward from the center of the pond like you're stirring a dream that doesn't want to wake. The sun rises higher, casting long shadows across the mat where the first baskets of salt are already drying. Historians still debate whether salt for the ali'i was truly handled differently, or whether every harvest held the same reverence. Some say the distinction was symbolic. Others swear the chiefs could tell the difference just by taste. You don't know. But today, everything feels slower, calmer, measured. The baskets fill, one after another. Each is lined with tie leaves, shaped like wide-mouthed bowls, with coils of lauhala around the rims. You fold the leaves gently over the top to keep the salt from escaping. There's something ceremonial about it, even if it's just salt, just clay, just sun. You help carry the baskets to the drying hut, where warm stones have been heating since dawn. The salt rests on raised mats, air flowing beneath. One of the elders sprinkles a few drops of fresh water on the ground near the entrance. A gesture, not a necessity. A way to say, mahalo. Your hands are tingling from the brine. Tiny salt cuts, so small you wouldn't notice, if not for the sting when you press your palms together. You flex your fingers and smile. Salt never lets you forget you touched it. After lunch, breadfruit with salted octopus that's somehow better cold, you help prepare the ceremonial pouch. It's made of fine kapa cloth, dyed with turmeric, tied with a strip of woven coconut fiber. You pack in 2 small gourds of alea salt and 1 wrapped cone of white pa'akai. The elder seals it with a knot and sets it in a wooden bowl carved from milo. "This one goes on the canoe," she says. "It travels before we do. The canoe launches tomorrow. You'll help load it. But today your part is nearly done. Before sunset, you rake one last pond. Not sacred, not ceremonial, just the far corner pond near the rock wall where little frogs sometimes hide beneath the shade. The salt here is slower, coarser, slightly damp. You rake gently, the motion now more muscle than thought. Children laugh nearby, chasing each other between the mats. One of them has salt in her hair, glittering like tiny stars. She's pretending to be a fish. The others are pretending to be sharks. You smile and pretend not to see the salt mat they've stomped across. As the light fades, you stack your tools in the shed and wash your arms in the brine basin. The water glows faintly in the last of the sun. Back home, your feet are sore, your hands raw, and your shoulders tight, but your heart feels full, tired in the right places. You stretch on the mat outside, watching stars poke holes in the sky. Tomorrow the canoe will sail with the salt. It will bring the ocean's gift back across the ocean, and you will rake again, as always. The canoe arrives at dawn. It's carved from breadfruit wood, polished smooth by sea spray and time. The prow is curved like a bird's beak, and it sits low in the water, nodding gently with the tide. You're already at the shore when it glides in, barefoot, basket in hand, salt still on your shirt from yesterday's harvest. You help load the cargo, bundles of dried fish, jars of preserved seaweed, and your pouch of ceremonial salt. The pouch is placed carefully into a hollowed gourd, cushioned by tie leaves and cloth. Nothing heavy is stacked on top of it. Everyone knows. It travels light, but it carries weight. The steersman nods at you, not speaking. His brow is furrowed, but not with worry. It's the look of a man watching the tide more than the people. Salt has to travel. It's part of the cycle. You step back and watch the canoe slip into deeper water. The paddlers don't move fast. The strokes are long, measured, rhythmically dull, like someone pounding dough. The sea is calm today, flat as a pond, the wind still tangled in sleep. Historians still argue how extensive salt trade in Hawaii was before Western contact. Some evidence suggests coastal salt was traded far inland, even to upland communities in woven bundles. Others think the exchange was mostly local, ceremonial, rarely commercial. Either way, salt traveled, by foot, by basket, by boat. You turn from the sea and head back to the flats. The ponds wait. They always wait. Today, you tend to the smaller ponds, the ones used for quick harvests. These don't hold as much brine, but they crystallize faster. The heat's already rising, and the clay beneath your feet squishes like fresh bread. You kneel and check the water. A few thin flakes have begun to form, early, soft, delicate. You reach for your rake and begin again. The motions feel familiar now, more breath than muscle. Push, lift, gather. A few salt crystals stick to your forearm. You wipe them off with a cloth that's never truly clean. It smells like sun and time. Your aunt is harvesting near the channel. She waves and holds up a funny-shaped crystal, long and bent like a tiny cane. You laugh and wave back. Everyone collects the weird ones. The salt that looks like birds, fish, tools. It's a superstition, maybe. Or just boredom in disguise. A child brings you water in a calabash. You drink. It tastes faintly of taro root and something sweet, maybe a mango leaf that fell into the pot. Nearby, your cousin is repairing a mat frame. One of the sticks cracked last week under the weight of a heavy batch. He mutters to himself as he works, then swats a fly with one smooth motion, still tying knots with the other hand. The salt from the quick pond is good today, white, clean, a little softer than usual. You scoop it into a basket and carry it to the shade. Someone's playing a nose flute nearby, the notes floating like fish bubbles through the air. The tune is slow, sleepy. You catch yourself swaying. You take a break under the palm tree. The wind is picked up again, not strong but steady. It dries the sweat on your neck, carries the scent of salt and flowers inland. You can hear the low whistle of it slipping between the mats. Back at the pond, a small bird lands near your rake, dips its beak into the brine, then hops away like it made a terrible mistake. You chuckle and keep working. The day ends with another slow sunset, orange bleeding into violet, the shadows stretching like tired limbs. You finish your last scoop, pat down the mats, and fold the tools back into the satchel. As you walk home, you wonder how far the canoe has gone. You wonder if the salt is already being unwrapped by other hands. You wonder what they'll taste, and if, somehow, they'll know it came from you. You're building a pond today, not tending, not raking, not collecting, building. It starts with a flat stretch of clay, not too soft, not too cracked, on the outer edge of your family's salt garden. The sun is already high and the air tastes like dusted stone and old water. You crouch down, trace a line in the dirt with your finger, and mark the corners where the levees will rise. The first tool you grab is a digging stick, passed down from your grandfather. The handle is smooth, the tip burned black to harden it. It's not fast, but it listens. Every strike into the earth feels like a conversation. You begin with the trenches, shallow furrows to hold runoff water lined with stone to keep the clay from washing out. You stack lava rocks carefully, placing each one like it's a puzzle piece you're pretending to know the answer to. The rocks are hot already, sun-baked and sharp. You rub your fingers on your shirt and keep going. It takes a full hour to shape the basic outline. You carve the levees with a board, packing the sides with more clay, then smoothing it with your palm. When finished, the pond is shaped like a misshapen turtle, slightly lopsided but functional. Historians still argue about how standardized these pond designs were. Some say families followed sacred geometric patterns, lining their salt gardens with symbolic meaning. Others argue it was practical, just what worked best with the land, the tide, and the family dog refusing to stay off the drying mats. You break for lunch beneath a cluster of pandanus trees. Your hands are caked with clay, your back is stiff, and your arms feel like stretched taro roots. You eat dried breadfruit and a bit of salted limu, the seaweed chewy and sharp with brine. It tastes better out here, always has. After resting, you bring the water. A bamboo channel diverts seawater from the tide pool to your new pond. You adjust the stones along the channel's edge, creating a gentle slope so the water trickles in without overwhelming the soft new walls. The first wave arrives slowly, filling the base with a glossy sheet. You wait, watching it settle. Your uncle walks by and nods without comment. That's how you know it's good. Later, you lay palm fronds along the outer edges as wind breaks. They flutter like banners at half-mast. A cousin drops off a rake and says, "For next week." You thank her, though your hands still sting from building today's levees. At sunset, the pond holds steady. The brine reflects the sky, pink and purple, and a little tired. You crouch at the edge, reach down and let your fingers trail through the water. It's cooler than you expect. Calmer. You press your thumb into the clay wall. It holds. The frogs will come later, hopping along the pond's edges, leaving strange little prints like secret letters. You'll pretend not to notice. It's part of the agreement. They don't eat the salt and you don't chase them off. As darkness falls, you gather your tools and rinse them in the old water basin. Your hands are raw and your feet are patterned with dried clay cracks. But your new pond waits. Still. Ready. Quiet as a breath held between ocean and sky. You wake early to the smell of dried octopus and salted breadfruit. Breakfast on pond harvest days. The octopus was prepared 2 days ago, folded with care and packed in coarse salt until it took on the texture of damp rope and the scent of the deep sea. Now, grilled lightly over a small fire, it's chewy, rich, and just this side of smoky. The breadfruit, on the other hand, was sliced thin, dried in the sun until the edges curled, then dusted with salt and stored in a gourd. When you bite into it, it's like eating ocean-stained parchment. You chew slowly as you watch the morning sun climb up the spine of the hills. It's going to be a dry one, perfect for preservation. The salt today isn't just for ceremony or sale, it's for food, and food means work. Long hours of slicing, drying, flipping, repacking. You haul a basket of cleaned fish to the salting mats, their silvery skins already dulling under the morning light. You lay them out in careful rows like scaly, expressionless little guests at a very well-organized luau. Your cousin is already working on the seaweed. She crumbles red limu over wide thai leaves, then sprinkles a handful of white salt over the top, almost like she's seasoning a story. You return to the fish. Each is packed in salt, first lightly, then folded into a layered stack inside a clay jar. The salt draws the moisture out, firms the flesh, makes it taste like the ocean remembers your name. Historians still debate the exact recipes and ratios used in early Hawaiian salt preservation. Some argue for strict proportions. Others say it was all feel, all instinct, like surfing on seasoning. A few fringe theories even suggest different types of salt. White, pink, crystal, imparted subtle changes to flavor and shelf life. No one agrees and no one minds. You wipe your hands on your knee and start on the breadfruit. The slices are leathery but not brittle, like old scrolls. You dust them again with salt and layer them into a basket lined with banana leaf. They'll keep for months, though they'll all be gone by the next moon. In the distance you hear laughter, your aunt chasing a chicken away from the drying mats again. It happens daily. The chicken seems to believe it's a salt inspector. As you flip the breadfruit, you notice one slice with a perfect circular burn mark, just a sunspot maybe, or maybe something stranger. You eat it anyway. It tastes like salted firewood. After lunch, you turn to the octopus. Today's batch is ready for final storage. You help fold the sticky arms into coils, wrap them in oiled kapa cloth, and tuck them into a gourd sealed with wax. It looks like a gift. Smells like one, too. If you've grown up here, your uncle offers you a piece as payment. You chew it slowly. It resists your teeth like it has one last story to tell. Before the day ends, you walk to the pond with the strongest brine. You skim off a small amount of salt still forming along the edges, fine crystals, almost powdery. This salt will be used for seasoning, not storing. It's gentle, kind, easy on the tongue. As you scoop, a breeze carries the scent of smoked octopus across the flats. The frogs begin their nightly songs. Someone nearby hums along with them, off-key but happy. You pack up the jars of preserved fish, the bundles of breadfruit, the gourd of limu. You stack them in the shade hut, then sit beside them, sipping cold water and letting the salt dry between your fingers. You smell like brine and fire. You taste like history, and your hands, red-stained, salt-etched, tired, are the only recipe that matters. The salt garden is quiet after the rain, not the kind of rain that floods or roars, just a long, steady drizzle that left the ponds glazed in silver and the clay soft as pudding. It's the kind of rain that lingers in your bones, that makes the salt sit stubborn and wet, refusing to dry. You walk barefoot, your feet sinking slightly with each step, and survey the damage. Some ponds are fine, just damp. Others have lost their crystal sheen entirely, turning back into shallow bowls of brine. A few drying mats have collapsed under their own soggy weight, like sleepy hammocks after a long feast. You sigh and lift the edge of one mat. The salt beneath is mushy, clumped like soggy flour. Not ruined, but close. You carry the mat to the shade hut and spread it out to dry. It smells like sunless salt and bamboo. Auntie arrives with a stack of fresh fronds and a face that says she already knew the rain was coming. She sets the fronds down and begins repairing a windbreak that collapsed in the night. You join her, wordlessly, handing her twine and trying not to wince when the frond edge nicks your thumb. Historians still argue whether ancient salt farmers had formal drainage systems for rainy days. Some evidence points to carved channels and emergency trenches. Other scholars think it was more improvisation than infrastructure. Either way, the rain has always been both friend and enemy. After the repairs, you turn to recovery mode. You scrape the top layer of soaked salt from the mats. It's not wasted, not yet. This salt can be repurposed for cleaning tools or pickling vegetables. You carry it in a gourd, careful not to spill, and label it with a charcoal mark. Kalika, utility only. The sun finally returns in the afternoon. It pushes through clouds like a guest arriving late but bearing good food. You tilt your face upward, close your eyes, and feel the heat dry your cheeks. Now comes the waiting. You set out fresh mats and rake through the ponds, breaking up clusters that have begun to reform. Salt loves order, but only on its terms. You guide it gently, never forcing. It's like convincing a cat to sit in your lap. It might, but only if it feels like it was its idea. A small boy shows up with a cracked gourd and asks if he can help. You hand him a scoop and point to a pond that's mostly shallow crust. He nods seriously and begins his own slow spiral. His technique is clumsy, but he hums while he works. You rake nearby, glancing his way now and then. He tries to shape his pile into a fish. It doesn't work, but the attempt earns a grin. Toward evening, the salt begins to sparkle again. Not much, just flecks of light scattered across the pond floor like forgotten stars. You kneel and brush your fingers through them, feeling the texture shift from brine to grit to flake. It's beginning again. Auntie finishes the last windbreak and leans on her rake. "Back to it," she says, and walks off toward the cooking fire. You remain a little longer, listening to the frogs and the faint hum of someone scraping clay in the distance. You gather your tools, wash them in the basin where the rainwater still lingers, and hang them on the rack by the hut. Then you press a hand to the clay wall of your favorite pond. Still warm, still breathing, still yours. There's a kind of salt that crunches underfoot like sugar. It doesn't appear often, only when the wind, sun, and brine all decide to cooperate for a few days straight. It's coarser than the flakes you usually rake, chunkier than the fine powder that dusts the mats. These are crystals you can feel through your soles as you walk. Sturdy, satisfying, and a little smug about their own texture. You wake to find them glinting across Pond 3, the one bordered by the crooked rock wall and that one stubborn fern that refuses to die no matter how salty the ground gets. You stretch, crack your shoulders, and step into the shallows. Each step crunches like walking across dry leaves in autumn, only sharper. You kneel and rake gently, watching the large crystals tumble like slow hailstones across the clay. They cling together in clusters as if they've formed friendships during the night. This batch will be ground into table salt. The elders call it inamona salt, the kind best for mixing with roasted kukui nuts to make a condiment that tastes like smoky ocean thunder. Or at least that's how your uncle described it before someone threw a sandal at him for being dramatic. Historians still debate how Hawaiians categorize different salt textures. Some claim it was mostly by feel and use, coarse for fish, fine for seasoning, pink for gifting. Others insist there was a more ritualized structure, with salt ranks that paralleled social ones. A fringe theory suggests that even the location of the pond altered its spirit and purpose. You just know this batch smells like sun-baked kelp and happiness. As you rake, your cousin joins you. She holds a woven basket lined with banana leaves. Together you gather the salt slowly, talking only now and then. She points out a crystal shaped like a canoe. You see a chicken. You argue. Then you both laugh and call it a chicken canoe and move on. Later you carry the basket to the grinding stone. It's a flat slab, black with time, shaded by a weathered breadfruit tree. You empty the salt slowly onto the stone and begin to grind with a second smaller stone, circular, smooth, and cool to the touch. The crunching sound is loud at first, then softer as the crystals yield to pressure. You keep grinding. You imagine you're not just crushing salt. You're compressing sunlight, sea wind, and silence into something edible. When the batch is fine enough, you scoop it into a gourd, add a few slivers of roasted kukui nut, and mix it gently with a carved wooden spoon. The paste turns dark, oily, and rich with scent. You taste it on the tip of your finger. It's bitter, then smoky, then warm, then gone. You smile. This is what salt is for, not just storing, not just shipping, not even just ceremony, but flavor, story. A reason to gather around a mat and eat with your fingers while someone plays the nose flute badly and a child spills poi on the dog. You seal the gourd with a twist of fiber and carry it to the shade hut. Inside, dozens of jars and pouches are lined in rows, each labeled with a charcoal mark, each holding a memory. Yours joins them. Outside, the sun begins to dip. The salt on your arms itches slightly, and your hands are dry from grinding, but your eyes are bright. Your spirit hums. The crunching salt will be gone tomorrow, but tonight it sings. You didn't plan on teaching today, but there's a knock at the edge of the salt garden, a polite kind of knock, a shuffling of sandals, the creak of hesitation in the way someone says, "Excuse me," without meaning to interrupt. You turn and find a young woman standing near the tool rack. She's not from the village, you can tell. Her hair is neat, her sandals are new, and she's holding a notebook like it might fly away. She says she's learning about pa'akai, not from books, but from people. You sigh softly, wave her in, and hand her a rake. She's never held one before. You show her the grip, the gentle angle, how you never stab at the brine, just skim, coax, encourage. She nods earnestly, then immediately splashes brine on her shirt. You don't say anything. The pond will teach her faster than you ever could. You guide her to Pond 5, the shallow one near the canoe ramp. The crystals there are small today, bright white, forming in thin ribbons like frost on glass. You rake beside her, slow and deliberate, letting her mirror your movements. Historians still argue whether salt farming knowledge was formally taught or just absorbed over time. Some say it passed through families like recipes or lullabies. Others insist there were designated teachers, keepers of methods, watchers of ponds. You're not sure which you are. But today, you're both student and guide. She asks too many questions at first. What happens if the brine gets too salty? Do frogs really ruin the batch? Why do you always rake clockwise? You answer what you can. The rest you let hang in the warm air like salt dust. She'll figure it out. Or she won't. The pond doesn't rush. After an hour, her posture relaxes. Her rake moves more like a paddle, less like a weapon. She begins to notice things, the way the breeze shifts the brine, the difference between morning light and midday glare on the water. She even spots a crystal shaped like a hook and saves it. You nod without comment. Later, you bring her to the drying mats. Together, you carry baskets of salt. Light, careful, arms aching in the good way. She asks if the clay always stains your hands this much. You show her your fingers, red at the creases. Only if you're doing it right, you say. For lunch, she shares dried mango, and you trade her some smoked fish. She chews slowly, eyes wide, says, "It tastes like the ocean is apologizing for being so loud." You decide that's actually kind of perfect. The afternoon brings more raking. You let her try one of the coarser ponds. She struggles, of course. Everyone does at first. But when she scrapes up a perfect layer without breaking it, you catch yourself smiling. Just a little. She doesn't notice. She's too busy staring at the salt. Before she leaves, she asks if she can come again. You say yes, because that's how this works. The salt teaches everyone, eventually. As the sun begins to dip, you watch her walk back down the path. Notebook tucked under one arm, rake slung awkwardly over her shoulder like a spear from a story she hasn't heard yet. You look down at your pond. Quiet, smooth, dotted with flecks of light. Some of the crystals she raked are shaped like letters. You don't read them. You already know what they say. The wind is different today. Not fierce, not angry, just persistent. It rolls in from the sea with a dry whisper, tugging gently at the fronds, lifting flecks of salt off the mats like it's trying to take them home again. You tighten the knots on the windbreaks and tuck a few stones onto the corners of the drying cloths. The ponds shimmer in the sunlight, their brine surfaces fluttering like skin touched by goosebumps. You adjust your gait, walking heel first so the clay doesn't squelch, and pause to watch a cluster of salt crystals tumble in spirals pushed by the breeze. This is polishing day. That's what Auntie calls it, when the wind scours the surface just enough to nudge the crystals into better shape. You don't touch the rake today. You watch. You let nature do the turning. The salt doesn't always need help. Sometimes it wants to be left alone. You spend the morning repairing baskets. The good ones are made of lauhala, leaves from the hala tree, stripped, softened, and woven in tight, patient spirals. You mend a frayed corner with your teeth, pulling the fibers snug, then threading in a fresh strip. It smells like dried grass and ocean air. Historians still debate how early Hawaiian salt was stored and moved in large quantities. Some say baskets were lined with bark or tie leaf. Others claim clay jars were more common. A few pet theories suggest dried gourds reinforced with resin were used for long-distance travel, but none agree on what happened when baskets got wet in the rain. You just know these ones squeak when you carry them wrong. In the afternoon, you climb the hill behind the salt pans. It's a slow climb, more lurch than walk. The clay sticks to your feet. and the wind makes it feel like you're leaning into a soft wall. At the top, you look out across the flats. 20 ponds, give or take, all at different stages of work. Some are dry, their floors caked in dull white frost. Some are mid-evaporation, surfaces twitching with new crystals. One is flooded, probably a forgotten valve again. From here, it looks like a map of an unfamiliar country. Bright borders, shimmering lakes, tiny figures moving slowly with long shadows. You sit under the old kukui tree and sip from a coconut shell. Below, your cousin flips a drying mat with one practiced snap. Another wipes her brow with the back of her hand and squints upward, maybe spotting you. You wave lazily. The breeze answers instead. A paper kite flutters overhead, caught in an updraft. It dips low and then swings wide, tail looping like it's drawing old chants in the sky. You watch it for a while. Someone's child must have lost it. Or maybe the kite escaped on purpose. You hope it doesn't crash into the ceremonial pond. Later, as the wind dies down, you return to the flats. The salt has shifted. Where it was scattered, it now gathers. Where it was jagged, it now lies smoother. Rounded edges, tighter piles. You rake a few spots carefully, more to nudge than to fix. The crystals respond with a faint scraping sound, like they're whispering thank you. You carry a basket home, only half full but gleaming. You pass a neighbor who nods at your haul and mutters, "Clean batch." You nod back, proud for reasons that don't need explaining. At home, you rinse your feet, dry them on a frayed mat, and set the basket under the eave to breathe. Salt likes to rest before it travels. You stretch your back, your shoulders creak, your palms sting faintly from the fibers. But the wind is soft again, and the salt, for once, seems pleased. You dream of salt, not metaphorically actual, glistening, stubborn salt. In the dream, you're standing knee-deep in a pond that stretches farther than the horizon. Crystals rise from the surface like tiny pyramids, humming softly, as if they're trying to tell you something important, but in a language made only of wind and brine. You wake to the smell of morning smoke and someone making fish stew. It's your day off. Kind of. Salt doesn't really allow for days off. It merely pauses, slightly amused, while you pretend you're not going to check on the ponds anyway. You stretch, yawn, and spend the first hour sipping hot Konane tea while trying to convince yourself not to work. The tea is bitter, earthy, made from boiled leaves that taste like someone tried to brew a tree. You fail, of course. By mid-morning, you're back at the edge of the salt garden, leaning on your rake like it's a walking stick. Just looking, you tell yourself, not working, just observing. Pond 9 is sparkling. You're drawn to it like a moth to a shimmering spreadsheet. You crouch down, touch the water, and feel the brine lick your fingers. So much for resting. You roll up your sleeves and start skimming. Salt farming does that to people. It seeps in, not just into your skin, your clothes, or your hair, but into your timing, your instincts. You begin to sense the right moment to turn a mat, the perfect breeze for a delicate harvest, the way the pond feels when it wants to be left alone. Historians still debate whether ancient Hawaiian salt workers lived on-site or rotated shifts through family units. Some records suggest people camped nearby in temporary huts during harvest season. Others propose permanent homes interwoven with the pond network. It's likely both were true, depending on lineage, purpose, and the mood of the sea. You wander between the ponds like a ghost haunting your own workplace. You find a stone out of place and move it. You brush a frog off a mat with a leaf. You stop to admire a puddle where the sun has created a perfect halo. And then, by some mix of boredom and devotion, you decide to clean the old kahika, the ceremonial salt pond that no one's touched in weeks. It sits farther inland, ringed by driftwood and stories. No one really harvests from it anymore, not for use at least. It's the pond of blessings, of first rakes and final prayers. You kneel beside it. The brine is shallow, slightly green. A single leaf floats across it, like it's on pilgrimage. You dip your fingers in and stir gently. The motion feels familiar, like smoothing a baby's hair or tracing old tattoos. You whisper a chant, not from memory, Not from ritual, but one stitched together from bits and pieces you've overheard. The salt doesn't mind. It listens anyway. Afterward, you sit under a plumeria tree and eat your lunch. Cold poi, salted mango, and a bit of coconut. Your fingers are crusted with brine again, even though today wasn't supposed to be a working day. The sky turns a lazy shade of blue-gray. A breeze picks up, then fades, as if testing its own importance. You lie back, arms behind your head, watching a bird hop along the edge of a half-finished drying mat. You realize you're smiling. Not because the salt was especially good today, not because anything miraculous happened, but because the ponds are still here, still forming, still drying, still listening, still yours. The day starts with a bowl of questions, not metaphorical ones, actual questions asked aloud mid-chew by a visiting elder with too many opinions and not enough teeth. He slurps his fish stew, then asks, "You ever notice the salt tastes different depending on who rakes it?" You pause, spoon halfway to your mouth. He grins. "Told you." You chew slowly, not entirely sure if he's joking, but now that he mentions it, you have noticed that your aunt's batches tend to be sharper, almost citrusy, while your cousin's taste mellow, like the ocean after a storm nap. You don't say anything, though. You just pass him more breadfruit and nod like you've always known. Later, you walk the salt flats with that question rattling in your head like a pebble in a gourd. Does salt carry the personality of the hands that shape it? You stop at Pond 2 and kneel. It's mid-stage. Crystals just beginning to form, tiny glints that sparkle like secrets. You draw your finger through them and wonder if this pond will remember you. Your cousin arrives with a basket of tools and a tired laugh. "Grandpa says you're overthinking the salt again." She tosses you a rake. "But also he says you're the only one who ever got the pink harvest right." You blink. The pink harvest? It's not a legend exactly. More of a whispered event. Supposedly every few seasons, one pond somewhere along the coast produces a batch of rose-colored salt. Soft, glowing, and rare. Some say it's because of algae. Others blame shrimp. And of course, the poetic types say it's the mood of the pond itself, finally reaching blush-level happiness. Historians still argue about its origin. There's evidence of pink salt being used in high ceremonies, even weddings. One text claims only chiefs could touch it. Another suggests it was just a pretty accident, like a wine spill on linen. No one agrees on the how or the why. But you do remember that one harvest. You'd been younger, newer to the work. Nervous, careful. The weather had been strange. Overcast in the mornings, blistering in the afternoons. You'd raked slower that week, almost cautiously, as if each grain might dissolve from pressure. And then, on the 6th day, you'd seen it. Soft pink, edges barely crystalline, like sunrise clinging to the ground. You never spoke of it much. It didn't return. But now, standing beside your cousin, you wonder if it might again. So you rake gently today. Softer than usual, as if the pond needs coaxing, not commanding. Your cousin hums a chant while she scrapes, something about moon tides and patience. A baby frog watches from the rock ledge, pretending not to care. The salt begins to rise. You can't tell yet if it's white or pink, but it's coming. Each flake curls upward like it's stretching. You both stop for lunch and eat under the edge of the tool hut. The elder from breakfast wanders by, peers into your basket and says, "Still not pink?" You throw a bit of poi at his sandal. He pretends not to notice. In the late afternoon, clouds drift in like sleepy canoes. The light goes soft, and for a moment, just a breath, the pond shifts color. Not pink, but maybe the suggestion of pink. Like it's thinking about it. You smile, maybe next week, or maybe next season, or maybe like stories, pink salt only shows up when no one's looking directly at it. The elder calls out again from behind you. "Told you! Salt's shy!" You laugh. He might be right. Even the dogs know not to bark during evaporation. It's midday, and the heat has settled thick over the salt pans, pressing down like a warm blanket with opinions. The brine ponds lie flat and silent, Their surface is glassy and still. Even the breeze seems to tiptoe, too polite to ripple the work in progress. You move slowly, more glide than walk, so your shadow doesn't startle the crystals. There's a superstition, old and half-serious, that salt evaporates best when left undisturbed. Some families refuse to speak near the ponds during peak heat, as if words might interrupt the process. You've never been that strict, but today you get it. Everything is poised. You squat beside Pond 6 and exhale through your nose, careful not to stir the air. The pond smells faintly of minerals, like a new coin left out in the rain. You check the mats next, already dusted with a fine coat of salt, dry to the touch, soft as flour. You lift the edge of one mat, shake it lightly, and watch the white dust drift down like a winter that forgot it was in Hawaii. Your uncle arrives, dragging a rake behind him like it owes him money. "Evaporation day," he says, mostly to the air. You nod. No other words are needed. Together you walk the perimeter of the ponds, noting which are nearly ready and which still shimmer with too much moisture. One has a strange film on top, maybe from the wind, maybe from some underwater drama involving brine shrimp. You scoop a bit of it into a gourd for testing later. Historians still debate the precise timing methods early Hawaiians used to judge salt readiness. Some say it was visual, color, sheen, water tension. Others claim more esoteric tools, bird calls, star angles, even foot temperature on the clay. One respected kupuna once insisted it all came down to smell. You check Pond 3 again. The water has begun to break apart, not from motion, but from transformation. Patches of crystal rise like freckles on skin. You smile. It's almost time. You and your uncle set up the collection baskets, wide, shallow, lined with tie leaf. He tells you to be patient. "Evaporation takes longer when you watch it," he says, then immediately sits down to watch it. You join him, of course. The sun moves inch by inch across the sky. Shadows crawl lazily over the drying racks. A child somewhere is singing the wrong lyrics to an old chant, and a chicken nearby seems to disagree violently. Then, like magic, the pond flashes. Not literal light, more like a texture shift. The surface fractures gently. The brine splits into mirrored puddles, and in the gaps between them, salt begins to lift. Tiny crystals first, like dandruff, then larger ones, like breadcrumbs left behind by a forgetful god. You both rise and begin the collection. Your rake moves carefully, tracing slow spirals so you don't disturb the deeper layers still forming. Your uncle works with the rhythm of a man who's done this for decades. Scoop, tilt, sift, pour. The salt clinks softly into the basket. This batch is good, dry, light, crumbly, but firm. You feel it under your nails, in the creases of your fingers, coating your forearms like fine snow. You taste a bit, just a flake on your tongue, and it hits like clean seawater filtered through memory. By evening, you've filled 4 baskets. You carry them to the shade hut, one by one, careful not to jostle the precious piles. As the sun begins to sink, your uncle pauses beside the last basket and says, "You see the wind today?" You blink. "See it?" He points. "There." And sure enough, the salt inside the basket has formed tiny ridges, waves frozen mid-crest, sculpted by air alone. You nod, as if you've always known that was possible. Later that night, you rub coconut oil into your dry hands and sit beneath the plumeria tree. Your muscles ache pleasantly, your feet are coated in clay, but your spirit is light. Like salt lifted by a breeze you didn't notice until it shaped everything. You're awoken before dawn by the sound of sloshing. Not the ocean, not this time. This is closer, familiar, purposeful. You slip outside and squint into the blue-gray dark, where 2 figures shuffle past carrying wooden buckets. They're headed toward the old brine pit, the one near the pandanus grove. You follow, barefoot and quiet, your feet remembering every cool stone along the path. Turns out it's a mixing day. Brine needs adjusting sometimes, especially after heavy rains or weeks of wind that leaves it too diluted to produce good crystal. So you mix. You and the others lower buckets into the holding trench, where older, more concentrated brine waits like a patient uncle with strong opinions. The smell is sharp, slightly metallic. You haul the buckets out and carry them pond by pond, adjusting levels like a chef, seasoning soup. The ratios matter. Too strong, and the crystals form too fast, jagged and brittle. Too weak, and they don't form at all. Just a wet, stubborn slick that mocks your efforts. You pour slowly, stir with long poles, and whisper small numbers under your breath like spells. Historians still argue how precise ancient Hawaiian salt makers were with salinity control. Some believe they used floating gourds or egg tests, like other salt cultures. Others suggest it was all in the eye and the tongue. One fragment of oral tradition claims the best salt makers could dip a finger in and tell the day's outcome by flavor alone. You test one pond, just a fingertip dipped and tapped to your tongue. Sour. Needs more time. Next to you, your cousin is calibrating by scent. Smells like turtle breath, she mutters, frowning. You nod sagely. Add a bucket and stir counterclockwise. She laughs. Because science, right? The sun rises slowly behind the trees. Its first rays catch the surface of the ponds, turning them briefly into mirrors. You see yourself reflected, blurred, streaked with brine, vaguely heroic in a sleepy, salt-crusted way. The birds start singing then, not in unison, more like a lazy choir that can't agree on the key. You pause for breakfast, cold sweet potato and a leftover sliver of dried fish. It tastes like gratitude. By mid-morning, the mixing is done. The ponds are still, settling. You sit on the edge of Pond 8, watching small bubbles rise and pop as the brine acclimates. You take out your journal. Yes, you have one. Bound in tapa cloth, filled with sketches and notes. Not just for tradition, but because sometimes salt feels like a language you're still learning. You record today's ratios, cloud cover, breeze direction, even the smell. Smells like turtle breath, you write, and grin. Auntie passes by and drops off a fresh tie leaf bundle. Inside, sea grapes, sliced mango, a square of steamed taro cake. You bow your head in thanks. She doesn't stop walking. That's how it goes. Salt work teaches silence as much as it teaches measurement. In the afternoon, you check the ceremonial pond. It looks pleased. The brine is calm, thick, quietly brewing something. You don't disturb it. You leave a sliver of flour on the edge and step back. Then comes the inspection walk. You and your cousin stroll the garden, basket of tools in hand, looking for signs. Frogs, cracks in the clay, bubbles, algae bloom, a sudden shimmer that might mean something or nothing at all. One pond is suspiciously quiet. You kneel beside it. The brine is darker than usual. You stir gently with a stick, and a clump of seaweed bobs to the surface. Not dangerous, but annoying. You fish it out, shake it off, and set it aside to dry. Later, it might make a good soup base or hair rinse. As the sun lowers, you light the coconut husk torch, not because it's dark, but because fire near salt always feels right, like balance, like opposites sharing a secret. The flames crackle softly. You sit by them, warm, tired, brine still on your fingertips. The mixing is done. Tomorrow the crystals will speak. Tonight the ponds sleep. Tonight the stars are salt. Not metaphorically, though that's tempting. No, they're actually out in force, scattered like someone spilled a basket of sea crystals across the black silk sky. You lie flat on a woven mat near the edge of Pond 4, staring up, letting your arms go slack beside you. You can still feel the rake in your hands. Ghost pressure, phantom rhythm. Your muscles twitch with leftover motions, scrape, lift, sift, pour. But your mind has floated. Salt has a way of slowing time. Not stopping it exactly, just making it thick like syrup or brine. Beside you, your cousin hums quietly. An old song about the stars being jealous of the moon. You don't remember the words, but the tune lives somewhere behind your ribs. Earlier in the day, you finished harvesting from 3 more ponds. The crystals were crisp, bright, and dry. the kind you could snap between your fingers like rice crackers. You'd filled 2 baskets before lunch and one after, and by dusk you'd earned your rest. The old man with the bad hip passed by and said, "That's warrior salt." You didn't ask what he meant. He always says that when the crystals are especially pointy. Historians still debate whether salt was considered sacred in its raw form or only after ceremony. Some say every grain was holy from the sea's kiss onward. Others argue that only salt used in blessings or healing had manna. One radical theory even suggests that the act of raking itself was the spiritual center and that the product was just a bonus. You consider this while counting constellations. You spot the canoe, the fishhook, the twisted spine that Auntie says looks like her neighbor's back after too much pounding taro. You wonder if the stars were once used to decide the raking schedule. Surely someone, long ago, stood on this same patch of earth and said, "The tide's right and Pleiades is laughing, start the harvest." Maybe they were right. Maybe they still are. Your cousin has fallen asleep, face first into the mat, arms akimbo. You drape a spare cloth over her and nudge her basket of dried fish closer in case the night dogs wander too near. You sit up and watch the ponds. At night they glow faintly, catching just enough starlight to look like still lava. The wind dies down, and everything becomes hush. Even the frogs sound half asleep. Even the insects buzz slower, like they're swaying in rhythm with the brine. You rise quietly and walk the edge of the ceremonial pond. The salt here doesn't form quickly. It waits, gathers slowly, like a secret choosing the right moment to be told. You kneel, touch the surface with your palm, and feel the faintest give, like pressing into a pillow made of ocean. You leave a whisper instead of a prayer. The pond hears both the same way. Back at your mat, you curl up beside the torch's ember remains. Your hands smell like salt and tie leaf. Your legs ache, but in a loyal, grateful way. You close your eyes, and just before sleep pulls you under, you swear you hear the ponds breathe. Inhale, draw in the stars. Exhale, release the salt. You wake before the rooster, which feels rude. The sky is still dark, just starting to shift from deep purple to that silvery blur that means soon. Your back is stiff from sleeping too close to the pond's edge, and there's a fine dusting of salt on your cheek like nature's own exfoliant. You stretch, creaking like old bamboo, and rise slowly. There's a quiet today, thicker than usual. Even the frogs seem contemplative. The first light slips across the clay, turning each pond into a mirror, trying to remember who it was last night. It's sorting day. Not glamorous, not spiritual, but necessary. The salt you've harvested over the last few weeks needs to be cleaned, graded, packed. Some batches will go to market, some to the healer, some into cloth bundles tied with braided grass, destined for weddings or feasts or the quiet cupboard of a mother who always just has a little left. You begin with the baskets stored under the shade hut. Each one smells different, some like fresh sea air, others with the faint tang of iron or driftwood. You scoop the salt into broad wooden bowls and begin sifting, fingers moving with the muscle memory of generations. Large crystals clink together like polite cousins at a reunion. Finer salt pours like sand, sighing as it settles. You remove twigs, errant pebbles. One piece of something that may or may not have been a bird tooth. You don't question it. It's part of the charm. Historians still argue how early Hawaiians categorized salt. Some believe there were 4 or 5 grades based on flake size and clarity. Others think the sorting was more symbolic: salt for food, salt for spirit, salt for story. One theory posits that the most prized salt wasn't white at all, but the faint amber pink you only get from letting the sun almost burn the pond dry. Your baskets today yield all kinds: craggy, snow-like chunks that crunch satisfyingly when tapped, thin flakes, translucent, sharp at the edges, a fine, dusty salt like frost scraped from the breath of a sleeping whale. You sort slowly, deliberately. Your hands move without needing thought, leaving your mind to wander. You remember your aunt teaching you how to tell a talking crystal from a silent one. If it's shaped like a canoe, it carries messages, she'd say. If it's shaped like a mountain, it listens. You'd believed her. You still kind of do. By mid-morning, the sorted salt is spread across drying mats again, this time not to form but to rest. Salt likes to dry twice, once from water, once from memory. You take a break and sip sweet tea made with dried hibiscus. It's tart, floral, the color of secrets. Your cousin joins you and offers candied coconut wrapped in banana leaf. You trade her a perfect pinch of coarse salt, which she sprinkles into her tea without hesitation. Lunch is quiet. No one talks about the salt. You talk about chickens and clouds and the noise the valley dogs made last night. But the salt is in every sentence anyway. It hums between words. In the afternoon, you pack. Small cloth pouches for the healer. Salt mixed with powdered alea clay, dyed red like volcanic dusk. Larger bundles for the market, tied with seagrass and tagged with driftwood slivers etched in old family marks. A few precious jars, blown glass, sealed with wax, are set aside for gifts. One will go to the teacher who visited. Another to the man who helped rebuild the collapsed canal after the big rain. You hold one jar up to the sun. The crystals inside glow faintly. You seal it with care. Evening comes slowly. The sky blushes, then darkens. You light a small oil lamp and finish the last bundle just as the wind picks up again. Gentle, cool, like a friend come to visit after a long walk. You look out over the garden of ponds. They glisten in the dusk. Still working, still waiting, still whispering. You whisper back, "Mahalo." The final day of the cycle feels quiet inside your bones, not from exhaustion, though yes, your arms are a little sore and your back is shaped suspiciously like a comma, but from a different kind of hush, the kind that settles when everything is finished, but nothing feels ended. You begin with the smallest pond, Pond 12, always the last to be harvested. Tucked behind the pandanus trees, shaded more often than not, it's the shyest of the lot. Some say it prefers solitude. Others say it just likes the music of the trees. You kneel beside it. Its surface today is barely rippling. The crystals that have formed are round, small, clustered like tiny stars trying to become a constellation. You don't rake. Not yet. You sit there for a moment, listening, watching, waiting for the pond to give permission. Then gently you begin. Your rake makes soft swirls, gathering the crystals in loose spirals. The sound is like a whisper dragged through crushed glass, but soothing somehow. You scoop carefully, laying the salt into your basket like it's something fragile and alive. By mid-morning you've finished. Pond 12 gleams faintly, emptied of its treasure, but not sad. No, it seems satisfied. You carry the basket to the storage hut, where other baskets wait. This last one is smaller than the rest, but you place it at the front, as if it deserves the honor. And it does. Outside, your cousin is painting tiny symbols onto the driftwood tags, glyphs that mean soft or good for trade or don't open near cats. You made that one up last year, but she still uses it. She holds up a tag and says, "This one's for Pond 12. What do you want it to say?" You pause, then smile. Patient. She nods, writes it, ties it on with care. Historians still argue whether these symbols had standardized meanings or were more fluid, family to family. Some believe salt tags were the first step toward written language in certain island cultures. Others say that's romantic nonsense. But either way, the marks matter. The marks tell the story. You spend the afternoon cleaning tools, rinsing the rakes in ocean water, drying the baskets in the sun, oiling the wood with kukui nut oil so it doesn't crack. Everything has its rhythm. The cleaning is as sacred as the harvesting. Later, you gather the leftover bits, salt dust, chips, broken flakes, the ones too small to sell, too pretty to waste. You collect them into a bowl and carry them to the ceremonial pond. You scatter the salt slowly. The flakes fall like snow, melting the moment they touch the surface. You speak a few quiet words, nothing rehearsed, just thanks. For the wind, the sun, the timing, the patience. The fact that no frogs drowned this season. The pond listens. It always does. As the sun sinks, the salt garden glows faintly in the last light. You walk its length one final time today, feet pressing gently into the warm clay paths. You touch each pond's edge with your fingertips. Just a tap. Just to say, I see you. And then you return home, salt-streaked, sun-touched, soul full. Tomorrow it starts again. But tonight, let's let the silence hold. Let's let the stars shine on the still ponds. Let's let the salt sleep. Now, the sky has turned to velvet, and the stars blink slowly overhead, like they too are winding down after a long day of watching waves and wind and salt. You're lying on your mat, the smell of Thai leaf and coconut oil clinging gently to your skin. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, then thinks better of it. The breeze moves through the fronds in a lazy hush, like a lullaby meant only for the ponds. Your arms are tired, but the good kind of tired, the kind that comes from doing something ancient, something repeated, something right. Your fingers still remember the shape of each crystal, the rhythm of the rake, the cool weight of the basket against your hip. Everything slows, your breath, the air, even your thoughts, now drifting like bits of salt on a calm sea. The ponds behind you gleam faintly in the moonlight, quiet, content, waiting for the next tide. They don't hurry, they don't need to. Neither do you. You stretch out, let your eyes flutter closed, and imagine the world as a great warm bowl of brine, holding you, supporting you, letting the salt rise gently to the surface. No effort, no pressure, just the slow, steady rhythm of breath, and sea and sleep. And when you dream, maybe you'll walk the ponds again. One soft mile at a time. End of script. Sweet dreams. Eat.